It's a beautiful day in Florida, 65 and sunny in Daytona for the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series final practice, brought to you by Toyota. Clay Greenfield led the first session earlier today, caught a nice draft. He and Cody Robaugh and Austin Theriault, Johnny Sauter, and Matt Crafton filled out the top 5. As you see, the top 10 from our earlier practice today. Crafton and Sauter, new teammates, makes it a little interesting as well. Great to have you with us for this final practice. Michael Waltrip, Phil Parsons, I'm Vince Welch. What caught your attention, Phil, from that first session?
Well, Vince, we talked about agendas for the guys, talk about maybe making some single truck runs and then maybe some drafting runs. But I saw a little more drafting than I thought we would see. We had some big packs and then we had some little packs as well. But I was really surprised by the amount of drafting and the amount of time that some of those guys stayed on the racetrack. Matt Crafton and Johnny Sauter both ran almost 20 laps in that practice session. That's a quarter of the distance of the race.
And you know why Johnny Sauter and Matt Crafton did that? They were having fun. They were like you and I. It's good to see trucks back on the racetrack. And I saw moves from those two trucks particularly that make me think that they might be the favorites tomorrow night. In this session, we might switch channels a bit and start just doing single truck runs. Maybe go out and see how you're going to qualify. Phil, these stages are short. You want to qualify up front, so if your team can make a slight adjustment and get just a little bit more speed while the truck is by itself, that could be beneficial in this session. So maybe a small pack here and there. I think Johnny Sauter and Matt Crafton are confident in what they have, and it'll be interesting to see how they can go by themselves.
Well, let's check in on some of those agendas. Joining the newest member of our trucks team, and it's Jamie Howe. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. You know, the best thing about starting here at Daytona is that I'm not alone. In fact, there are 15 rookies making their Daytona debut here in the Truck Series. One of those is young 18-year-old Harrison Burton behind the wheel of the number 18 from Kyle Busch Motorsports. Now, practice one did not go as he was hoping. In fact, they broke a valve in the engine. That team had to come back to the garage, immediately begin an engine change. He's not sure he's going to make it out. They're thinking that they're going to by the end of the session, but certainly he has some momentum to carry in as he did win the ARCA race here last weekend. Hermie?
I would like to also welcome Jamie to our broadcast team here at Daytona as well. Now, last year, Stuart Friesen, what a great story this team was. So fun to watch, so much excitement, such a talented racer. 5 stage wins, but no race wins. So I asked Stuart prior to this practice, I said, what do you have to do differently this year? He said, Hermie, we've got the one thing that we absolutely have to have, that speed on the racetrack. We've got to execute better on pit road. That's the team and me. He says if we do those little things, we can win multiple races. We could even pull one off here tomorrow night.
And that would be right on time after being runner-up 3 times a year ago. Austin Theriault on the left. He takes over that, or Austin Hill on the left takes over the 16 truck this year. The clock is ticking on the final practice of the day, and the final practice before we qualify and race tomorrow for the season opener of the Gander Outdoors Truck Series. We're welcoming some of the new drivers and even our new pit reporter, Jamie Howe. We should also say welcome to Gander Outdoors as the new series sponsor. Great to have them on board and looking forward to a great season here in 2019.
You know what I love about the sponsors? When we started with Craftsman, you work on your truck with Craftsman tools, right? Camping World, we got campers everywhere. And now Gander Outdoors, we're all outdoors types. The sponsors just fit perfectly, and the Truck Series is going to have a great 2019 season.
And we've only had three series sponsors in the history of the Truck Series.
And Camping World didn't go anywhere.
No, exactly.
Still out there in the infield.
Well, and that infield is filling up as well, as was out there earlier in the week, and some were parking their RVs and their motor coaches, and the Gander RV Duel later tonight you'll see on FS1.
How cool is that? Get a picture made with a Daytona 500 trophy.
You have a couple of those, don't you?
Yeah, I do that all the time at my apartment. I said,
do you take a selfie? Do you take a selfie with it? Or?
Pictures of Michael in his apartment. I think we need to move on. Move on to the champ, Brett Moffitt, one of those new faces in new places. He's moved over from Hattori Racing, where he won the championship a year ago in that 16 truck that we were talking about with Austin Hill before the break. And now he's running for GMS, teaming up with crew chief Jerry Baxter.
I thought we got rid of the playoff mustache when he won the championship last year, and we did for a while, right?
Wasn't it gone for a couple weeks? He said he tried to play a little golf, wasn't going well. He said, I need that mustache back.
It's back. It's
I
back.
say, after the season he had a year ago, I'd grow that thing. No chance I'd shave it.
I wouldn't change a thing, would you, Vin?
No, absolutely not.
And this is what we talked about in the opening, just getting out there and seeing exactly what that truck will do by itself. I don't know, Phil, what all can the team do? Brett Moffitt, Jerry Baxter, what can they adjust on that truck if they don't like the speed they see here?
I think maybe they can work with some cowls and air cleaners and stuff like that, maybe some exhaust, but I think by the looks of that attitude with the distance that splitter was off the ground, that looked about perfect to me.
Well, I like that speed. 49.58 he ran around the track and seems to be pretty solid from the time we saw in that first session, Jamie, with the trucks that ran by themselves.
When you talk about teamwork, when I was talking to Brett Moffitt, he brought up the point that he's always been with a one-car team. So having teammates is something he's new with. He's got to talk to the team. He's got to figure out with Jerry Baxter how to work together. It's nothing that he's ever done before within one team. So certainly something to watch for this weekend and as the season progresses.
Well, he's working with a good one in Jerry Baxter, the veteran, and has plenty of wins under his belt as a crew chief.
Look at that camera on his helmet.
I was just looking at the same thing, that visor cam.
That's going to give us some unbelievable shots when we go racing.
Here's Natalie Decker in the 54 for Gilliland Crosley Racing. She's raced in the Truck Series before, but never in a truck here at Daytona. Running a couple of ARCA races here at Daytona with some success.
Frankie Kerr has moved over to be the crew chief for Natalie.
Sprint Car Hall of Famer Frankie Kerr.
Whether she runs in the ARCA Racing Series, the Menard Series, or the Truck Series, Frankie will be her sponsor. A lot of experience on the pit box and calling the shots for Natalie.
I think Frankie was former Jeff Gordon crew chief in the sprint car as well, so maybe some pictures of Jeff with one of those bad mustaches alongside Frankie.
Well, those are certainly all over the place. We've seen a lot of those. We'll be able to see it tonight, too, when we watch the rivalry between he and Dale Earnhardt. That mustache was center stage for a long time when Jeff first showed up.
Good shot of Austin Terrio right there. That's Ricky Benton's Black's tire Ford. Ricky, we didn't see him towards the end of the season last year because the Hurricane Florence that really devastated the eastern part of the state in North Carolina. Black's Tire, Ricky's tire stores, and I think he said he has 13 stores, and 12 of them had damage from that hurricane. So he spent a lot of time repairing those stores, getting them back open, and taking care of some of his employees that were displaced as well. So great to see Ricky's truck back on the racetrack. And man, you talk about during that first practice how good the equipment looks, Michael. That's a fine looking race truck right there.
A lot of speed. He was up near the top of the charts in that first session, and he's there again, fastest so far with that single truck run.
And Terrio's run well and had some success here in the past. Had a top 5 run back in 2015. In fact, it was his first ever Truck Series race.
Driving for Brad
Ran
Keselowski.
4th in that race, and he knows his way around, that's for sure. Terrio made just one start last season, finished 8th in Las Vegas.
That's not bad, right?
I like the percentage. I like the percentages. Just underway, final practice for the trucks. The Gander Outdoors Truck Series at Daytona. Now, it's not that 10 or 12 truck draft we saw in the first practice today, but there's 5 of them together, and just up ahead of them 5 or 6 more. So if they would end up being able to connect, we maybe would see a nice pack around this track here at Daytona.
Yeah, I think this was a plan. The KBM trucks, along with Shiggy Hattori's number 16 of Boston Hill, getting together, and one of Tyler Young's trucks is just going to jump on the back of that train, the 02 of Tyler Dipple, and see if he can hang with those guys.
How about what Tyler Young has done with that team, Young's Motorsports? 3 full-time drivers this season. Gus Dean, you mentioned Tyler Dipple there in the 02. Spencer Boyd also running full-time this season. And
down, roll out of it here. Roll out of it. Cautions out, debris at turn 3.
Understand we've got some debris on course, so they're going to put the red out, and everybody will head to pit lane.
You know, you were talking about Tyler Young, and he credits it to the NT1. The money savings of the new NT1 built by Elmore that they instituted last year, he said that allowed him to build his team and to do those 3 programs.
And
it's a little frustrating as drivers. You get that draft all formed up, and darn, you got to do it all over again. So the road to pit road, line right back up. Jamie, what's happening with that 18? Are they going to get out?
Well, 3 times now they have fired up the engine on this thing. Harrison Burton is sitting behind the wheel. He said to his team on the radio, get away from this thing. I want to go out and drive it. They just shut it off again. They keep putting the hood down, raising it back up. So they did get the engine change completed, but they are still missing out on the second practice.
Well, that's unfortunate for Harrison Burton, and you know that the entire team wants to be out there working, and they got to change that. They changed that engine, so that means Harrison Burton's going to start at the tail of the field tomorrow night, regardless of where he qualifies.
That'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, his strategy has changed, right, Phil?
It sure has.
Look at this pack coming through and hitting that debris that's on course.
Oh.
Hopefully back to green when we come back to Daytona.
This week on NASCAR Race Hub, the season is officially underway, and we're talking with the Daytona 500 champion. Plus, we have Jamie McMurray, fresh off his Daytona 500 run, along with Brad Keselowski, David Reagan, Chad Knaus, Cole Pern, and Drew Blickensderfer. And with that kind of lineup, you know we'll have a champion-sized radioactive as well.
Hang on. Done. Oh, my God.
That's all this week on NASCAR Race Hub. Weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern, only on FS1.
If you happen to see Radioactive last week, there were, I think, more beeps than words.
But what an amazing studio there, that the new interactive studio back in Charlotte.
Innovative and first class. Man, you can really break down all the action, and nobody does it any better than they do on the hub.
Great to watch Adam and Shannon Spake each weeknight. Watching Johnny Sauter do a little work, Hermie.
Yeah, and Vince, one of the stories we have been discussing today is Johnny Sauter's move from GMS over to ThorSport, back a place that he'd raced 2009 to 2015. Johnny Sauter told me January the 9th is basically when he knew he would not be back. Now, I talked to the crew chief on this truck, Joe Shear Jr., and I asked him, how much time have you had to prepare your trucks to start out the season? This truck here for Daytona, he said he was able to put his setup underneath the truck as far as suspension parts, but he has not been able, did not have time to work on this truck aerodynamically at all. But he did say his truck for Atlanta next week and then Las Vegas would be full-blown trucks like he wanted it, suspension-wise, setup-wise, and aerodynamically. So all things considered, they got to be really happy with the performance they've had so far today, given the lack of time to prepare.
Well, and how big a deal is that?
Huge.
Absolutely. Somebody you're comfortable with, somebody you've had a lot of success with, and somebody that Duke Thorson and the people at ThorSport are familiar with too, because Joe was with him there at ThorSport. So I think that's the best possible scenario, I think, for Johnny Sauter as well as Joe Shear.
And just think about Johnny Sauter, the guy that put the setup under his trucks that took him to victory lane so many times last year, is going to be able to put those same setups on this 13 truck. So Johnny has to be really confident and happy how things turned out.
Sauter has won 3 of the last 6 here at Daytona and has led the most laps the last 2 seasons.
Getting a pretty good picture here, Phil, of what's going to be a good qualifying lap. 49.73 there for Crafton. That's a really smoking lap. We see one better. Can't really figure out if it was clean or not. Austin Terrio maybe a little bit quicker.
I think he had some help. I think Brett Moffitt ran that 49.58, and I think that was a pretty clean lap. So anywhere from a 49.50, I think, to a 50 flat are pretty good laps right now.
Angela Ruck in the 8 truck running with Joe Nemechek, part of the NIMCO contingent this weekend. She's the niece of Derek Cope.
1990 Daytona 500 champion. He's got one of those Harley J. Earl trophies, and she positioned herself perfectly in that brief practice we had before the red to get the fastest lap time. And you can see she's got a fast truck rolling out of the gas there as she approached the one ahead of her.
And you were talking and telling the story in the first practice, Mike, for those that didn't have an opportunity to see it. It's not just a very exciting time for her because she's racing here at Daytona, but she's about to become a mom.
Yeah, she and her husband Mike have a reality show coming as well, and she's going to adopt. They're getting ready to adopt a baby, and that's imminent.
Due any day, right?
Mother's due any day, and so baby watch while you're racing a truck. That's pretty, pretty exciting times, huh?
She's in the middle of a pretty good pack right here.
She's going to learn so much, Phil. This big, heavy truck, how that air will buffet it around, how she can get runs, what she has to do as she gets those runs, rolling in and off the gas.
A little bit of a gap there, so Austin Wayne's self was able to get in that gap in front of her in this 22 truck.
I just love this for Angela, to be able to get in every situation she can. Every lap, every turn, she's going to learn something that will help her do what I think most everybody hope happens tomorrow night, and that is survive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was interesting talking to her yesterday was when she was talking about her new truck and this new opportunity, it was how much time they put into just the seat in the car. She said she was at the shop about 3 or 4 days. They spent about 12 hours just on her seat and trying to get it molded perfectly to her. That's something that she had never had before. So she feels comfortable. She's learning what to do out there, but she at least knows that the team is behind her and that they're going to give her whatever she needs to get the job done.
And Phil, you know this. It's so important. Running 180 miles an hour, inches apart off these other trucks, you have to be comfortable. That seat, you just have to put it out of your mind. The same thing with the mirrors. You've got to just look in those mirrors and it be second nature. You don't have to worry about what you're not seeing. Just be confident in what you are seeing.
And back in the day, Michael, when you and I first started, you were able to move around a lot more because we didn't have the head containment seats like they do now. So right now, you're pretty much committed. Wherever your head is in that headrest, that's about where it has to be. So that mirror has to be where you can just glance with your eyes, not actually move your head. Those mirrors have to be where you can just look to the left to see the side mirror or look up and to the right to see the rearview mirror.
Now, if you watch the clash last Sunday with the Cup cars, you saw them running around the top of the track. Quite a bit different with the trucks. The preferred spot is down on that yellow line, and if you're going to go too wide, you're going to go outside those trucks that are on the bottom. Why the difference in the technique?
Aerodynamics, you would guess the trucks obviously punch a different hole in the air, but we've never watched the truckers get up there next to the outside wall and see what would happen. It's always been buried right against the yellow line on the bottom with the second groove just to the outside of them. It'll be interesting to see after all these drivers have learned by watching the Cup stars. Do they try that on Friday night when they throw the green flag? It could be fun to watch.
Let's check in back in the garage with Hermie.
Well, Vince, the 88, the familiar colors on this Menards Ford, another piece of the ThorSport puzzle, and I spoke to these guys earlier today as well. When you think of Matt Crafton, you certainly think of the 88, but you also think of that guy right there. He's the crew chief for this truck, Junior Joyner. I mean, both of those guys told me yesterday that for most of the offseason, they were not 100% sure that they would be back together, working together as driver crew chief in 2019. He felt like that Duke Thorson, the owner of this team, asked him a lot of questions in the offseason. Did they think they were staled or getting stale together? Would they benefit from different combinations? Ultimately, the way things played out, they're back together, and both of them individually told me that they are excited to do battle with each other again after the season they had last year. They look to get back to their winning ways in 2019.
Certainly a challenging year for them a season ago. Not only did they not win, stat that I found amazing, he was only 3 of the 23 races last year. Was Crafton even the best finisher on his team? And can understand, I guess, why they start kind of putting their heads together, trying to decide if it is the right call to stay together, he and Junior Joyner.
Yeah, and Junior told me yesterday, he said, hey, we have some unfinished business. He said, we weren't going to part as crew chief and driver like that. We know that we have the capability to do a lot better, and certainly they have in the past. So they were really happy to be paired together again.
And don't you think that the Johnny Sauter, Joe Shear combo arriving over there, that's gonna help
Yes.
Matt and Junior as well. They'll run better this year because they have more information to share. So probably the perfect opportunity for Matt and Junior to say, give us one more run at it there, Coach. We think we got this.
And that's why they were so excited to have Johnny Sauter and Joe Shear join ThorSport again.
And whereas Crafton and Sauter used to be kind of like oil and water in regards to their relationship, now much better, right?
Yes, Johnny was telling me that they became much better friends after they separated, after Johnny went over to GMS. And so that really paved the way for them to go back together again and really have an outstanding season. And I look for both of those guys to have an outstanding season this year. Like
what we're seeing from Christian Eckes here leading this train of trucks, and right behind him there is the 17. That's David Gilliland, and Todd Gilliland, David's son, is right behind him in the 4, and then Austin Hill in that 16, another Toyota, last year's championship truck.
Wouldn't be surprising at all to see these 4 trucks battling for the win at the end of the race tomorrow night. You know, Phil, I'm just curious. If I was Eckes and that team, I'd say run up high here a bit. Let's run around the top and see what happens. They've got a great baseline for their lap time. The last time by 46.8. Go up top and see what it'll run. Get that information. Check a box.
Because they really don't know exactly how the outside wall will affect the tails of these trucks. And you can see a lot of times, you see how as we look at those trucks as they come towards us, the left rear corner is over.
Finish this lap, and then once you get straight, we'll just float up to the top. Just drag just a little bit of brake coming inside. You're going to get in behind the 3rd one. Drag a touch of brake. One more. This is your last one, then we'll get right down. Right here, all clear. All clear.
Isn't that great, Phil? You're just telling your young rookie, drag a little brake, pull up high. He's almost driving that truck for him, but he needs that information. The spotter has so much history, so much experience. He knows just what to tell his young racer to do.
But I was talking about, you could see the tails of those trucks are kind of working over towards the inside. When we go to Atlanta next week, it will be the opposite. These guys have a very small window of what they can do to these bodies. When you come to Daytona, you want to get rid of that drag, so you take all you've got one direction. You go to Atlanta when you want the most downforce, you go the other direction. That's why these tails are a little bit different here. So nobody really knows exactly how those trucks will react when they're right up against that wall. It could be faster, maybe it's going to be slower. It all depends, because they're different than the Cup cars for sure.
Inside of 30 minutes of happy hour at Daytona for the trucks. Final practice for the trucks here from Daytona, and then tomorrow qualifying at 4:30 Eastern time will lead us up to race day, followed by the race. 100 laps, 250 miles from right here in Daytona.
Edge of your seat, nail-biting action from the time they say go.
Better put your helmet on at home.
Quick stages. These guys don't have a chance to even catch their breath before they'll throw the stage ending flag.
Austin Hill in the 16, the championship team from a year ago. The team remains in place, and it's familiar to see the 16 atop the leaderboard as the fastest so far.
Doing some pit stop practice right now.
As aggressive as he can be without sliding those tires, that's the goal. Get down to pit road speed. That looked like a really nice entry there for Austin. He'll probably carry it all the way down pit road, checking his tachometer, making sure he doesn't exceed the speed. And you can see how those speeds are checked. Those are timing lines. It's time over distance. And it's all the way to that yellow line, and he's got to crank it up and get going again.
How thin is the line between opportunity and pressure? I mean, this is the best equipment that Austin Hill's ever had an opportunity to drive, but he's following the series champion who won 6 times in this equipment a year ago.
I think there's definitely pressure on Austin Hill, but again, you want to put yourself in position, as we talked about during that first practice session, to get in something that you know has the potential to win races and win championships, and that's the position he's got himself in. So fortunate, so happy to be with Shiggy Hattori and Scott Zipadelli, Mike Gricci, all the guys over there at Hattori Racing, and it's his opportunity. He's been around the sport a few years now. He's run limited schedules a couple years prior to last year, ran the full season with Tyler Young last year, a multi-winner in the K&N series over the years. So it's time for Austin to make it happen.
And he has worked hard in the offseason to be prepared on his fitness, and he's lost some weight. He has done everything within his power to be ready in the seat this season. Well, we kind of been following the story on the 18 of Harrison Burton and the struggles they've had. Let's get more with Jamie.
The team has told me that they're going to make it out by the end of this session. However, the problem that they're facing right now is that the water temp sensor seems to be bad after they've done that engine change. And the issue that creates is that when it's reading that the temperature is too high, it dumps more fuel into it. The engine's not going to run properly. That has to be fixed before they can send Harrison out there to get any more laps. And he's sitting in the car. He's got his helmet on. He keeps saying to the guys, come on, come on, come on. It is killing him to be missing out on this practice time.
Frustrating indeed, but got to make sure everything is tidied up before you get it back out there or do more damage.
He'll have to look back on his notebook on how he ran that ARCA race. That worked out all right for him.
Yeah, it did.
And he'll be joined by Todd Gilliland and Christian Eckes in the race tomorrow night for Kyle Busch Motorsports. And then Kyle will be in the 51 truck next week in Atlanta. Brandon Jones will get some appearances in that 51 truck as well. And those drivers, kind of the group of drivers working in that 51 truck, will be working with crew chief Rudy Fugel.
Yeah, and Kyle Busch, the 33 years old, he's ancient compared to these other guys. And I hope he's not watching and listening when I call him ancient, but 33 years old, and he's going to run the 5 races. And remember, right now tied with Ron Hornaday for the most series wins ever at 51, and I think he probably stands a pretty good chance maybe of getting 52 this year.
But Phil, if Kyle is ancient at 33, what are you?
Beyond ancient. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks a lot.
We talked about Harrison Burton winning the race last week here at Daytona in the ARCA Series. Hopes to be doing that kind of celebrating again tomorrow night. Good day to be at the beach today. Maybe getting a little sun. Too far away, just about a 10-minute drive from the racetrack here at Daytona. Only 4 or 5 miles.
It's about an hour and a half run for me. I ran that half marathon one time. I was almost halfway to the beach when I saw Jimmy Johnson heading back the other way.
Were you glad you didn't have the other half to run?
Yeah. It's quite the trek down there. Those boys, Jimmy Johnson, Landon Castle, I think, and Jamie
I was
McMurray.
talking to Jamie McMurray last night. He ran it.
Our teammate, welcome Jamie McMurray to the Fox family. Good to have you.
Yeah, in the half marathon last weekend, McMurray, I think, was fourth overall. I asked him, was that in your age group? And he chuckled and said, no, that was overall.
Hey, that's enough about age in this show. That's enough.
Coming up on 15 minutes left here in final practice as we watch Grant Enfinger, winner last year at Las Vegas, and I thought was as consistent as any driver and team in the series a year ago, and just kept feeling like they were just right there from a big breakthrough. And I think the last month or so of the season, they kind of got it. We saw some big speed from them, got the win at Vegas, and I think this is a championship contender this year.
Yeah, we heard crew chief Jeff Hensley as they were going on the track for the first time with his pep talk. So let's keep that momentum going that we had at the end of 2018.
This is just sort of tidying up your loose ends here, making a couple of last qualifying runs, making sure you like what you're feeling, everything looks good, and just ready to go for tomorrow night.
And speaking of looking good, you look at that paint on the number 98. That's actually the design that came from social media. Somebody from Champion actually saw it online. It was designed by 23-year-old George Mija from Romania, a huge fan. He just put it out there and said, hey, what do you think? They ended up putting it on the truck. How cool is that?
Love it.
Hey, Michael, you guys were just discussing getting to the final few moments of practice, making some final last-minute little tweaks, changes. Just had a quick conversation with Marcus Richmond, the crew chief for Todd Gilliland. Obviously, pretty good speed, third fastest. You see Marcus on the screen. Truck's driving pretty good, but they put a bigger sway bar in the front of this truck, and Marcus said, we're just looking to see if we can adjust the attitude a little bit on this truck in the final few minutes. So is that something a driver can give feedback on, something the crew chief already knows, or what kind of difference can a little bit of an attitude adjustment with the truck, not the driver, make as far as tomorrow night?
Well, if you improve the attitude of the truck, it helps the attitude of the driver as well. And Hermie, I think the way they'll monitor that is with photographs. They'll have photographers taking pictures of the Ford truck as it goes around the track. The bigger sway bar should hold possibly that left front corner down a little bit better, giving the truck a better aero attitude as it goes around the racetrack. And you can see, that's a great shot right there. You can see where that nose is. If you're at home, you can see there's 3.5, 4 inches there underneath the front valence. That splitter, when it goes on the road, watch as it goes straight to the ground and how precise these measurements are by the teams. They have to use science and technology to understand how to get that nose. See how you can see the whole front tires, it's up off the ground, and watch it just make its way to the pavement. That means it's sealed off, good aerodynamics, good handling, and a lot more speed when it gets down there.
And you know, Michael, it's easy to say, okay, when that thing gets in the corner, there's going to be pressure on those springs, and that's going to put that splitter down where they want it to be. But these guys have it so it's down there all the way around the racetrack, so the air does the job. And right now, they don't want it to go too far, so they don't want that splitter to hit the racetrack. That's bad. But they want that splitter somewhere between 0 and 3/8 of an inch up off the racetrack. And that's about where that thing looks like it is right now.
That's just beautiful, and it just shows you how technologically advanced these vehicles are. They're able to figure out exactly how to get through tech with that nose up in the air, and then when it goes to the racetrack, seal it right to the road. And Phil, you're going down the back straightaway, there's equal pressure on the front tires. You go down to the corner, it loads that right front up, but you can never see the front end transition.
It's crazy.
It stays exactly where they want it. Somebody with an engineering degree from a university figured this all out.
Somebody smart, real smart.
More than us.
Yeah, probably several engineers from several universities.
That's a nice little tidy pack. If you've got experience and you know what you're looking for, and you can see that nose is up, you're like, theirs is wrong. Well, that's not right. That's not the reason why it's up. He doesn't have the air pressure on the front of his truck holding it down. It's in the draft, so that nose will peak up a little bit. As soon as he pulls out, it'll go right back to the ground.
Some of that air is going over the top of that truck instead of pushing down on the front end on that middle truck.
But you sure will take that truck ahead of you to draft off of. He's busting a hole, and your horsepower under your hood is taking advantage of that and pushing the truck ahead of you along.
I had a feeling that Todd would pull out a line and try to get to that back of that line to see if that truck will pull up a little bit better. He's going to compare that to previous runs with that different sway bar that Hermie was talking about.
Now look at the nose on the 51 now, right down on the ground.
Happy hour. The final practice for the trucks from Daytona coming back. Well, the playoffs last year saw these 8 drivers run for the championship.
Got rid of a couple of them after Talladega. Ben Rhodes and Stuart Friesen dropped out.
And then
Grant Enfinger got hot. Saw a lot of speed out of that truck, but it just wasn't quite enough, Bill.
Yeah, Matt Crafton as well did not transfer on to the championship round at Homestead, Miami.
Our final 4 was Sauter and Haley, teammates. Brett Moffitt, Noah Gregson, both in the Toyotas, and Moffitt won at Homestead and clinched the championship for Shiggy Hattori's group, and then changed teams in the offseason, and he's now over at GMS.
Pretty incredible what they were able to do with that single truck team over there at Shiggy Hattori's, but goes to show you some good equipment, good people, and a great driver.
Great young driver for sure. Brett just overachieved late in races. He was able to pull them out right at the end and take advantage of great restarts and just awesome driving to go to victory lane 6 times last year.
And what a great story it was. I mean, they had sponsorship issues. I mean, there were weeks they thought they weren't even going to be able to make it to the racetrack, and somehow piecemealed it together and got some financial help just at the right time, it seemed, and next thing you knew, they were fighting for the championship at Homestead and came away with the big trophy.
You know, we talk about Brett Moffitt and the job he did, Scott Zippadelli and all the guys over there, Mike Ricci, the team manager, but I don't know if we can say enough about Shiggy Hattori keeping that truck on the racetrack, keeping the funding enough, and I'm sure dipping into his pocket to keep that truck out there going.
Little draft forming up here. Been following along with Golan, trying to get on the road. There he is. And then keep an eye on number 47, Chris Fontaine, up in the top 10 again, like we always see him. This truck's probably 20 years old, but he tunes her up and brings her to Daytona and Talladega and is able to run up front. He does such a great job using the air, using his experience and his draft to always be near the front. He could be an underdog story tomorrow night.
Made just a couple of starts last season, but as you said, Mike, he has the ability, that's for sure.
His best career finish came right here back a few years ago. He finished 7th. We haven't talked a whole lot about that 82 truck. That's Spencer Davis. Remember, Spencer had a top 10 finish here last year driving for KBM.
Got a handful of starts for Kyle Busch last year.
Yeah, they joined up with Mark Rett and Rhett Jones Racing, and another tremendous looking truck there. Spencer Davis, we know that can get the job done as they go by the 54 of Natalie Decker.
Strong group of people they've got put together there. And in no way did I mean anything about the Spencer Davis group when I said group of people.
It was a great band. It really was. Stephen Winwood.
I think this has the makings of a great team as well.
Yes.
They've really done a nice job coming out here and showing speed at Daytona.
49 right behind him, that black with the pink numbers. That's Ray Cicerelli. Ray formed a new team in the offseason, and looks like maybe for the better. That truck looks awfully good right now running in that draft with Spencer Davis and Chris Fontaine and Natalie Decker.
Comes Fontaine. There's a good look at Cicerelli in that 49.
Another good looking race truck.
We've been following the situation of the 18 truck of Harrison Burton with that engine change, and more from Hermie now.
Vince getting down to crunch time. As you see the ticker in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, just under 6 minutes left. Mike Hillman Jr., the crew chief, the most recent issue, they had to change the engine harness. These Ilmore engines come with a harness. They had to change that. They're wrapping that up right now, buttoning the tires up, and he just said, Hermie, if we can get out just for 2 laps to make sure nothing's leaking, nothing's vibrating, none of those issues, that would make us sleep much better tonight. Otherwise, they're very confident with the truck, but they think they'll get out at least for 2 laps.
Yeah, well, it's so important for them to get out there and run those 2 laps, make sure they don't have that same issue with the water temperature sensor, and then they can go to sleep. They ran 16 laps in that first session. We talked about Harrison winning the ARCA race last week, so he has some experience on the racetrack, and they have teammates to fall back on. But I think right now, if they don't get this fixed and get on the racetrack, then they'll go back and probably change absolutely everything associated with an engine. Every harness, maybe even the fuels, everything to make sure that they try to get that gremlin. Looks like maybe they've got it figured out here.
We'll find out when we come back from break. Less than 5 minutes left in practice. Hey, coming up next, as soon as practice is over, switch it over to FS1 for NASCAR Race Day. And Shannon Spake, Larry McReynolds, Bobby Labonte, Ricky Craven. Everybody will be there getting you ready for the duel. Finish setting the field for the Daytona 500. Hey, look, the 18 of Harrison Burton has indeed made it out with a couple of minutes to spare.
And so you feel better they're going to sleep good tonight, right?
I do. Well, I'll make sure he gets around, runs a couple laps, and the speed's about where they think it should be. But so far, so good.
Let's listen to it and see if it sounds normal. And it does not. Did that sound normal to you? You looked at me weird.
We're so used to seeing trucks in a pack.
I don't think so. Maybe he was just waiting on his teammate to try to catch a draft. That would have been a good plan.
Yeah. So he would not have been full throttle.
But it doesn't sound right, Phil.
I have a tendency to agree with you, but let's see if he can catch Christian Eckes in the 51.
I guess if it didn't sound right, he would have quit by now.
Sounds better there, doesn't it?
I don't know. That might have been Eckes' truck we were hearing as well. So it just doesn't look good to me. No, that's not right.
No.
How big of a concern is this
huge,
for
huge.
Mike Hillman Jr., the crew chief, and the rest of the team?
How important was it for him to get out there and make that lap or two? Now they can get readings off the engine, see what exactly is going on.
Yeah, I agree with you. It did not sound well right there.
Got to give out a shout out to Turtle out there, our spotter. camera guy extraordinaire making the call saying the 18 doesn't sound good. Listen to it.
Yeah.
Maybe plays on the nerves a little bit of 18-year-old Harrison Burton also, or?
You know, Vince, I don't think so. I think he's got a team behind him. He knows they've got a problem. They'll have it fixed for tomorrow. I mean, I know he's only 18, but he's got the experience and a lot of knowledge about what this team has behind him.
I don't know what by me. It sounded bad. 165, 100. No vibrations or anything, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like that's probably about 500, 600, 700 RPM off running by himself. I would think these trucks would run somewhere in excess of 7,000 RPMs by themselves. In the draft, they'll probably wrap up to 74, 75, maybe even more than that. But it's off right now.
The black and red flags.
I'm just glad they got out.
Me too.
Practice is over.
Now they can go to work and change everything. We talked about it. They may even put another engine in, a different engine, and if they don't feel like they can get their handle on exactly what's going off, but they will have the Elmore engineers to diagnose that. They will download the information from the engine control unit, and I firmly believe, like Michael said, they'll have it figured out by tomorrow. But it's going to be a little bit of an anxious time, I think, for that team.
Yeah, they might have it figured out, but I just would hate to get that's how my season is starting, with that issue. Now they thought they had it figured out, then they've gone out and they've run some laps, now they don't. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out for them tomorrow during qualifying and the race. Practice complete for the trucks at Daytona. Feels good to have the first couple of practices under our belt for the 2019 season. The Gander Outdoors Truck Series.
You know what feels good, Vince? We had a lot of action, a lot of passing and great drafting, but no problems.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about the 18. I mean, that may cause us some sleepless time tonight.
No wrinkled fenders, though, and that's good news.
That's good.
So you see how they all shook out here in this final practice session.
I love that last page. We have Johnny Sauter, Ben Rhodes, Brett Moffitt, potential winners outside the top 20.
Well, look at Brennan Poole. We know he can race up toward the front. And Cody Robaugh was up in the top 5 in that first practice, down in the bottom 5 in the second one.
Well, the practice is complete. Now we got to qualify, and we'll do that tomorrow afternoon, 4:30 Eastern. Then tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock with race day, and tomorrow night, of course, 100 laps here from Daytona. But coming up next over on FS1, NASCAR Race Day, getting you ready for the duel at Daytona.